Thanks again for joining us again. My name is Janelle. I'm the Director of Communications. Welcome to our town hall for this month. And I encourage everybody to use the chat to ask questions or put things in the Q&A box. We'll have a little Q&A session towards the end here, but I will go ahead and move us forward into our agenda for today. So we'll start off with a little level setting with a background on the importance of state level advocacy, featuring one of our board members, Sean, and then we'll get into talking more about what our progress has been in key states for Hunger-Free Campus. And that will be shared by our advocacy team. And then we have a student leader panel following that, as well as an audience Q&A. So again, encourage everybody to use the chat and put your questions in for our guest speakers today. But I will introduce our first speaker, Sean. Sean is the Director of Higher Education and State Policy at Arnold Ventures, where he advances their higher education policy priorities. He is also a member of Swipe Out Hunger's Board of Directors and has previously held roles at the Institute for Higher Education Policy, the Higher Education Commissions in Indiana, Maryland, and Tennessee. So, Sean, I will let you take it away.
Thanks, and hi everyone. Thank you for having me. I always love talking about state policy and particularly love talking about everything that Swipe has to offer. So this is a double win for me. I'll try to keep it brief though, because I think it's more important to hear from students. So why state policy and why is it important? Well, first of all, states are the laboratories of democracy in our federal system. States are able to experiment in ways that we can't always do on a national level, which makes it really exciting and really important to be engaging with state lawmakers, because that way we are able to, keep pushing that needle a little bit further, a little bit further. And states copy each other all the time. Yeah, I've worked in multiple states and I've engaged in a few dozen more. They're always copying the best ideas. So the more that we can get good ideas into the bloodstream and into the conversation, the more often they'll get picked up elsewhere. As well as one of the difficulties of state policy is that a lot of the folks that you are trying to influence and educate are really part-time lawmakers, which means that they don't really have a robust staff to get things done. So they really rely on the experts in this conversation right here, who can bring them some information, some good ideas, and kind of a plan forward. One of the differences you'll see with the federal level is that, on the federal level, you've got thousands of people working on every single issue, and there's an expert for everything. On the state level, that's not the way. And so you all, in this conversation, you all are the experts, and it's really an empowering feeling, a scary feeling, but an empowering feeling to be able to say, you know what it is that you want to get done, and it's really up to you to help try to move that ball forward. And that's part of the reason why I'm really excited about this conversation. Speaking of the federal level, it comes and goes. Right now, it's I think I'm trying to be polite, but I think it's at best a rocky situation on the federal level to get anything done, and so it makes state work all the more important. Um, and if you can get enough states to pass things like Hunger-Free Campus, it makes it really difficult for the federal government to roll those programs back. We're seeing similar issues play out with, say, Medicaid. If enough states expand Medicaid, it becomes really difficult for the feds to roll that back. So if we get enough states to push forward on the things that we're trying to do, suddenly you've got all of these lawmakers that represent the states that we're working with saying, well, I don't know if Congress should roll this thing back. So we can turn our own Congress members into our allies if we pass things on the state level. And finally, higher education specifically. Well, states influence higher ed in a number of ways, from funding the services that we are trying to expand, to providing financial aid to students that really need it, to providing regulations and requirements that can say, hey, students need food if they're going to actually be able to get through college. And anytime, and one piece of advice before I stop talking at you all is that state lawmakers are always thinking about how can they grow their own workforce, and particularly how can they help employers get the employees that they need. I know it's a very capitalistic lens, but that's how a lot of lawmakers think, particularly in this day and age where we are in politics. It's all about, how can we get enough workers? How can we expand the tax base? And so being able to show lawmakers, hey, if we fight hunger, this is going to produce more students and more graduates and help people live better and fuller lives and get the education that they deserve, and get really the dignity that food provides. It's going to help the state in the long run. Anytime you can kind of tie it to those pieces, I think is really helpful. So that's kind of my spiel on why state policy is important, particularly for higher ed. And I'm really looking forward to engaging with you and hearing the conversation.
Thank you so much, Sean, for providing that helpful background and context. Now we'll pass it off to Jay and Zoe. Jay is our advocacy organizer for the Great Lakes region, and Zoe is our national field manager, both on our advocacy team, and they'll be sharing more about our progress with Hunger Free Campus. So I'll let Jay and Zoe take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Janelle. Nice to meet you if I haven't yet, or I've also seen a bunch of familiar names on here. So really great to see a lot of you on here. Just want to say thank you again to Sean. That was really great. And I think really highlights a lot of the reason why the work that we do and the work that I've done with a lot of the people on this call and that Hutch About Hunger has been doing with you all is so important, and why having those campuses and campus leaders and students on the ground is such a big deal and so important for making this legislative impact and really getting this state support. Um, so just for anyone on the call who has not kind of gotten the Hunger Free Campus rundown, I want to give a brief overview today, but the most of what Zoe and I are going to be doing is going over kind of what our priority states, especially for the past year, has been, and what kind of movement we've seen for Hunger Free Campus in the past year. But to give a brief overview, Hunger Free Campus is a state level policy created by Swipe Out Hunger, specifically providing funding to colleges and universities through state level grant programs to help expand on-campus anti-hunger initiatives. So like I said, it's a state-based piece of legislation. You can see on the right there, we have a map. At this point, it's been passed in 12 states and then introduced in 10 others. So all the states you see in green there have passed a piece of legislation. All the ones in pink have introduced a piece of legislation or have maybe done something on the long lines of a pilot program and don't quite have that bill passed yet. And then so far to date, we have seen $36 million of Hunger Free Campus funding distributed through those state programs to colleges and universities. So that's kind of the brief overview. If you want to move to the next slide, Janelle. So yeah, I'm our Great Lakes advocacy organizer. So these are kind of the states that I have been focused on for the past year. The states that we're really seeing a lot of movement in and a lot of potential in the Midwest and in the Great Lakes region. I'm based in Michigan, so I will start there. Michigan, I actually started advocating as a student in Michigan. I was a student at Michigan State University, and it was Michigans who really started, students who really started this movement, reaching out to Swipe Out Hunger. There's other students on the panel that you'll hear a little bit later who have done similar things or were part of that movement in Michigan as well. And just like Sean said, having that coalition on the ground has really been the key to what has been the success for Hunger Free Campus in Michigan. So we began that advocacy in 2023. In 2024, we had a bill that did get through the House Higher Education Committee, but it didn't make it to the House floor, unfortunately, with some timing around the election and then some lame duck barriers after that. We weren't able to see that bill progress, but we were able to get a really great win in Michigan through a state agency, which is another pathway that we tend to take to try and get this impact as well. In some of our states, where we were able to get $500,000 included as a pilot program in a new state agency called Michigan Lifelong Education Advancement and Potential. which is really focused on a lot of the things that John had said earlier too, where a lot of progress right now is being made, especially in this kind of basic needs work around that kind of workforce attainment, so kind of graduation rates, that kind of thing. This new state agency in Michigan is kind of focused around that things, and it seems like a really great place to house this kind of a program. So in this year, we've been focused on really working with them on implementing that pilot program with those pilot campuses, and continuing to advocate for that funding in the grant programs that MyLeap is going to be distributing in this next year. So we're working alongside them, and we're also expecting to see the hunger-free campus legislation introduced here again very soon, and hoping to get that passed in this next year. Ohio, kind of a similar story. Bill was introduced in 2023, but wasn't able to pass. But we did recently, just I think in the past couple months, had a bill reintroduced this year by Representatives Sean Brennan and James Hoop in Ohio, which is the hunger-free campus legislation, and then also a financial ask of $2.5 million for those grants split over 2 years. Ohio has a 2-year budget process, so they get the 2 years kind of upfront, so it'll be split between 2 years. In Ohio, we have a really great campus coalition and a lot of really great partners that we work alongside, but we're still really working on expanding that. Student coalition and engaging students with legislators is something that we've seen have a lot of success. So that's kind of where our focus has been at in Ohio this past year. Illinois is one of our more interesting states, where we actually did have a bill passed in 2023, but it didn't include any funding to it. So without that funding, there's not a lot happening with the bill right now. So that kind of hunger-free campus designation piece and the grant program isn't something that's currently happening in Illinois, despite the bill passing. So we're kind of on that funding fight right now, trying to get funding attached to the bill. What we're doing right now is expanding our coalition similar to other states, trying to get more students, more campuses, working with, similar to Michigan, working with the state agency in Illinois is kind of another pathway of trying to get legislators and also the Illinois Board of Higher Education to make this be a funding priority in Illinois and getting students and campuses in those conversations. And then Indiana, it was first introduced in 2023 by Representative Earl Harris. It's been introduced every year since then to the House Higher Education Committee. And similarly to Illinois, we're really in a building phase right now where we're really working on building up that coalition of students and campus leaders, as well as partners. And we have some really great partners that we've been working with in Indiana, including Bread for the World and Feeding America have been really great partners in Indiana. And we have a lot of opportunities for student engagement in those states. So that's kind of where we're at in our Midwest states. So really see a lot of opportunity for movement there. And I think we have some really strong pathways forward and a lot of really great campus coalitions. I see a lot of people on this call who are a part of those groups and have done a lot of great work alongside us. So happy to see all of you. But yeah, that is kind of where we are at in the Midwest. And now I can hand it over to Zoe to cover some of our other priority states from this past year.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. As Jay said, it's so nice to see so many familiar names on the call today, as well as some new ones. I'm going to give an overview of these next 4 states. Kind of just ended up being a little bit of a coincidence that they were all from a similar region, but it worked out nicely. So first up is Virginia, which we'll also highlight with our student panel. Really exciting to hear from a student about that experience. But I guess the hunger-free campus movement in Virginia actually began a couple years ago, hit a couple of roadblocks just based on the legislative landscape, and not really having a lot of capacity at the time to push the legislation through to the finish. The state agency SHEV in Virginia did end up coming out with a study, which kind of was the beginning of this student-led on-the-ground campaign, which began last year and finished at the beginning of this year. At the beginning of this year, we were able to bring dozens of students from all across the state of Virginia, from multiple different campuses, to Richmond at the Capitol to advocate for the passage of the bill, which helped move along the momentum and gained a lot of support from our already very supportive legislative champions. And we're so happy to say that actually this year we were able to pass the Hunger-Free Campus grant program in Virginia with $500,000 in funding. It's very exciting. It was officially signed into law maybe a couple months ago at this point. And now has been passed back to SHEV, that state agency that I just mentioned, who are working out a couple budget items in order to figure out who exactly is going to run the program. So kind of staying tuned for some next steps there, hoping to get connected to folks in the SHEV agency, as well as our programs team, so we can get the word out to campuses to apply for that grant funding. Louisiana, we've had the pleasure of just taking on a more supportive role, but I wanted to highlight the amazing work that they've been doing. Louisiana has a really strong anti-hunger coalition, as well as the Board of Regents, who have taken the Hunger Free Campus Grant Program on and have really championed that for the past couple of years. I do see Dr. LaMadrid is on the call. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for that correction. So this first bullet point is actually incorrect. Louisiana introduced a piece of policy in 2022, and it did pass in the regular legislative session. But then, like I said, the Board of Regents was able to take on this program. And I believe in the first year, they supported 6 schools with $8,000 grants, and are now in their second year where they're aiming to support 5 schools with $10,000 grants. And I believe that application process is being rolled out at the moment. So if you haven't already been connected to Dr. LaMadrid or the Board of Regents or the coalition in Louisiana, for the folks on the call in this state, definitely encourage you to get connected to learn more about the grant program. There's also a report from the first year right on the Board of Regents website, so you can see kind of how that grant program was run and what the impact was for those 6 campuses. And we're hopefully going to continue this partnership to just grow that program. I know Dr. LaMadrid, last time we spoke, was talking about potentially reintroducing some policy so that down the road we could get even more funding and have even more grant opportunities for campuses all across the state, which is really amazing. In Tennessee, we did have a piece of policy introduced this past session as well. We saw some really great support right off the bat from our legislative champions, who kind of just whisked it through on their own. We had a couple of campuses and campus partners that we had been working through, but before we were even able to get a campaign off the ground, it had already passed the first committee, which again is just a testament to the support from our bill champions. We then kind of were working together to rework some language, since there was no fiscal note at the time in the version of the Hunger Free Campus Bill for Tennessee. So we were trying to forego the Finance Committee. For those of you who are policy wonks, you know that often stalls bills. So because there was no fiscal note this time, we're just trying to move the bill, what's called behind the budget. And it's currently waiting for a vote in the House. I actually believe it was supposed to be voted on in the past couple of weeks, but I haven't seen any updates on their website. So very soon we should know kind of the status of the bill in Tennessee. And if should that pass the session, that would establish the grant program, so that hopefully next session we can go in and add some funding so that folks can apply for grants. Alabama, this has stayed on our radar for the past couple years. Again, we've taken on more of just a supportive role, had some couple really amazing students and campuses in the past, and we were really happy to see that this bill was reintroduced again in this past legislative session. And again, before we could even, reach out to students and campuses, it was just whisked through the House. It's crossed over to the Senate and is awaiting to get pushed through the Senate on that side. I don't unfortunately have a lot of information about that particular bill, but if you're from Alabama and you want to know more about what's happening, definitely feel free to reach out and we can get you connected. So that's really exciting to see in a state like Alabama, especially just that quick movement and support on the legislative side of things. That kind of recaps the 8 sort of top states that Swipe Out Hunger has been able to support or actively lead this past session. It actually isn't quite all of the states that have done Hunger Free Campus movement this year, so I just want to put that little caveat. I know we have some Massachusetts folks on the call, and you all are always killing it year after year, have had some amazing wins too. So if you are on this call, you see us or you don't see your state and you maybe have heard of Hunger Free Campus, you're curious to know if there's been movement, again, just feel free to reach out and we can maybe get you connected to those folks as well. With that, I think I'll pass it back to Janelle, because I know we have our amazing student panel coming up.
Yes, thank you, Zoe, and thank you, Jay, for the amazing updates with Hunger Free Campus. I now want to introduce our student leader panel. We have 3 amazing students who have been involved in our advocacy work this year. I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves, starting with Ashley and moving across the line here. But if you could introduce yourself and share a little bit about the advocacy work you've been involved in and how you've been involved in advocacy work with Swipe Out Hunger so far. So I'll pass it off to Ashley first.
Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me. I guess I'm now an alumni. I just graduated a couple days ago from the Master's Program in Public Administration here at BGSU. While during my last year of grad school, I was also on the Student Leadership Board for Swipe Out Hunger. I'm here. I'm originally from Texas, born and raised, but I just went to school here and I still live here in Bowling Green, Ohio. So as you can see, being a struggling college student just trying to survive, follow me from state to state, which just proves it doesn't happen in one place, but it happens all across the country. Um, and um, and really was became more interested in what was going on in the state of Ohio through a communications course that I took, where I was learning about HB 590, yeah, if I'm correct, and was introducing it to my class because I also didn't know what was going on. Before then, I was the grad assistant for the Falcon Food Pantry here at BGSU. But being my degree being in the political science department, I had a little bit of more curiosity as someone who studied policy about why is it taking so long for things to happen, as someone who studied that it's not that complicated, and really learning that, campus, these bills that are trying to make, campuses to provide those benefits doesn't affect who you vote for, it affects everybody. And how we can figure out a solution. So like they mentioned earlier, it was introduced in 2023. And as someone who studied policy, was very interested because I got to sort of have an insider perspective of why is it taking so long and what do we need to do to get a solution? Because for everything, there's a solution. It's just sometimes, you know, getting people educated and inspired to sort of, build that in and make it happen.
Thank you, Ashley. Eleanor, we'll go with you next to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Eleanor. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently a fourth year, which is our fancy way of saying senior at the University of Virginia, and graduate in one short week, which I'm very sad about. I'm not quite ready to leave. But I've been involved at our student food pantry since my first year at UVA, when I took a course called Writing About Food Justice and just really learned, honestly, about the prevalence of food insecurity in higher education, and knew that I wanted to be a part of the action against it. So joined the food pantry and then had the pleasure this past year of serving as its executive director, though I'm now stepping away from that role as I leave. But my advocacy actually first began probably much earlier on, at kind of the university level, really working with administrators and some incredible staff that been very fortunate to have and work with to really try to make change at the university level. And we've actually seen some really incredible progress there. But then I felt really lucky and honored to be able to work with Swipe starting in early 2024, when the bill was kind of first introduced, meeting with uh, Delegate Cousins in Rome, to really try to bring this funding to the state level and really make sure that we could establish pantries and other food insecurity intervention programs across universities across the state. So I've had just a wonderful time working with Swipe these past couple of years now, with that bill, and then an amazing lobby day that entire day in January, where we and dozens of students across the state, like Zoe said, were able to get together with some incredible other student leaders, and really advocate for that bill and talk about the student experience on campus. I think that kind of day, that opportunity, as well as actually inviting our own state representatives to our campuses. We were able to invite Senator Deeds and Delegate Lawford to ours, and an incredible student leader at William and Mary, Allison Lim, was also able to invite her representatives to her pantry. and kind of that experience of those representatives at our actual pantries, actually seeing the physical need on campus, as well as having that amazing representation of students from across the state coming to speak about their experiences with food insecurity and their peers and their friends and their classmates' experiences with food insecurity. Pushed the needle far enough that the bill was passed this year and the state set aside $500,000 to help establish food pantries around grounds, so in campuses across the state.
Thanks, Eleanor. And we'll pass it off to Parker for your introduction.
Hey guys, my name's Parker. Just like the other two, I'm on the way out, just graduated this last weekend at Michigan State University. So sounds like we're gonna need new student leaders to rise up and be on these panels and that sort of thing. But I've been involved with the Michigan Hunger-Free Campus movement for the last 2 years, probably a little over 2 years now. Jay, who you guys heard from just prior, he kind of led the charge as a student and then got me involved. And from that point on, I was leading a lot of our student efforts, and he highlighted some of those good successes we've had. Really proud of the $500,000 pilot program that we were able to secure in last year's budget. And that took a lot of meeting with different stakeholders, both meeting with your lawmakers, but then also meeting with different university admin to see how they see that working out, garnering their support, meeting with universities all over the state, really, to get them on the mission. It takes a big coalition to get these big wins. And so that was something that we spent a lot of time on. Now, a lot of what we're doing is figuring out how to best implement this money. So as a pilot program, trying to see how we can best be an example for other universities, because we want to be able to turn around and talk to the lawmakers who gave us this money and be like, see, this is how we were able to address the issue at our campus, and these were the techniques that we found useful, and then turn that around and say, hey, all of these other universities could also be using this funding to do very similar programs. So that's something that I've been working on closely this past year, and I see that we have some folks from Michigan State who have also been working on the pilot program that are on the call. So I will leave it at that for now.
Thanks, everybody. I will go ahead and also stop sharing so we can see all of the panelists together. But as we continue on with our panel, we have a few questions for the three of you. The first of being, what has been a highlight or success of the advocacy work you've done so far on your campus or in your state? Feel free, whoever would like to go first, to just jump in.
I can go. I would say that there's both highlights and been really grateful for the successes we've had. I think on the state and the university level, the University of Virginia actually just established a basic needs endowment, just based off of a lot of our university advocacy, and that will actually start funding our food pantry so we can secure some funding at that level. And then kind of the success at the state level again is this incredible grant program that was passed, and hopefully we'll be able to help establish and maintain pantries across our state. I think the highlight, though, of that advocacy work really was actually that lobby day in Richmond, and just seeing the incredible excitement and story and passion across like all of the students there, and all of our student leaders and all the student representatives, and their ability to communicate those passions and interests and care to our representatives was really meaningful and impactful, and just such an incredible experience to be a part of, and an incredible movement to be a part of.
I can talk for a little bit about that as well with highlights. I kind of just highlighted our pilot program. I think that was our biggest win, because we haven't gotten the bill itself passed yet, but being able to secure that money and see real changes happening is a major highlight. But beyond just that singular win, I think a big highlight for a lot of the students that have involved in the movement is learning the legislative process and seeing that it's not as complicated and daunting to like talk to your local elected officials and advocate for the changes that you want to see. So generally, it's been very empowering for a lot of us to really learn how this process works and be involved in advocacy. And it's something that can be applied to all sorts of issues throughout our lives as well.
I would say a highlight is just being able to spread the information. Um, like I said, for us, it became more of a classroom topic that we didn't know about, um, of all these resources that are out there, because I think it's sometimes it's something we don't think about. And it's also not provided, like, well, every university is different. And just discovering students' needs of like, well, how do you feel about the situation and how would you benefit from it? And I'll never forget, like, at the end of our class presentation that day, my professor was like, oh, like, can you see online, like, what the status is? And I learned that day actually that that professor was on the board originally who was deciding whether a food pantry would be a good or bad idea in our university. Um, and we were looking at it and she's like, that's it? Like nothing's happened? Like I know this is not my field, but you know, I can't like how are you surviving basically? And so I think leads a bigger conversation of um, bringing it up, but also lots of questions of why are we barely finding this out? How do I know this information? Why is it not really put out there? And in a way, I guess the highlight is it brought up more challenges to our university in a good way, because it made it think like, if I know this, you should know this, and if you don't, you need to be spreading out this information because it impacts us. Our university is all about, for the public good. And I'm like, well, we are part of the public good. So what are you doing that's good for us as your public? And I think it really brings up an interesting conversation where if sometimes it can be intimidated where like most people don't even know who their local officials are. Most people don't even vote, but we know who the president of our university is. So that could be a great way to start bringing up that conversation of being like, this is an issue. I don't know if you care, but I do. So what are you going to do about it? Because you have more power than I do. So for me, like I said, it really it started all the way back to who are the most important officials that I know, and for me it was my university president, and bringing it up of like this is an uncomfortable topic, but you know, what are you gonna do about it?
Thank you all for sharing. And leading into that, I think you all have sort of touched on this a little bit already, but what was your biggest takeaways or a learning moment from your advocacy work as a student?
I think my biggest takeaway really is that wins aren't going to happen alone. In the now like 3 years that we've been doing pretty significant advocacy work, either on campus or at the state level, advocacy is definitely a team effort, right? Like none of the change, the passing of this bill would have never happened without students across the state, you all coming together to advocate not only from their own experiences, but from their own pool of knowledge. Like that knowledge that is their experience, and maybe they've done more literature reviews and have more of a scientific background with it, or experienced food insecurity themselves, or policy experts. But there is no way that we would have been able to make this happen without doing it all together. And I think that's why the lobby day was definitely my highlight. Just you really see it in action on those days. So it can be happening often behind the scenes, behind our Zoom screens and behind our emails. Um, but really seeing it together on that day was really impactful. And it definitely showed and solidified that fact that going forward and for the rest of my life is when you're trying to accomplish big wins like this, it has to be done with a team, a passionate team, but with people that are passionate maybe for different reasons or have different experiences.
Eleanor made a good point about seeing it all coming together. And then, like, also you mentioned the behind the scenes work of it. And that's something that I've learned is how much behind the scenes work is involved in something like this. like if you're writing these new bills and working on new pieces of legislation, there's so much behind the scenes work that's involved in, like, just from writing the bills. I know the students here at Michigan State, we spent a couple hours one day just sitting down, reading it through every line, being like, okay, so this language is good here for this requirement there, and like just figuring out how we wanted to tailor it takes a lot of time. And then really a lot of emailing, and just the behind the scenes work isn't what's seen at those lobby days, and being able to know and appreciate the hard work that goes into that is very important, and that's a life skill too, to understand.
So I learned two things. It's all about teamwork, and this is a bipartisan issue, like I mentioned earlier. And it really gave me more of an idea. And it really came up based on what you guys were talking about. So like in my public administration, in my master's program, basically, in our last semester, I don't know how it works in other universities, but we take like a capstone course. And recently we just did a project where we worked with the local city of Toledo, which is here in Toledo, Ohio, where we helped them figure out a solution for an issue they were having with their city council. And I wonder if it takes a lot of people to put the work together, to basically put our brains together, to do the research, to find specialists, to find people who know how to look up this information and create solutions. So I wonder if for our our elected officials, if there was a way for them to have those connections and relationships with their local universities and sort of be like, this is the solution we want. Obviously, we can't do this on our own. Find a collaborative issue. I don't know. It's just an idea. But we're always here to help. But sometimes, like that communication is the actual barrier. So maybe there be a way, like, I don't know if they can reach out to local universities, political science departments, those who do research in food pantries, to sort of figure out, okay, what's your problem there? What's your problem there? What's your problem there? Sort of create data, put that together, and try to come up with solutions. And maybe actually being able to bring that to the house and be like, see, this is not something that we're making up. This is something that is impacting the whole state. I don't know. That might be a great way to bring out solutions in the future. Just an idea.
Thank you. I feel like we're all about gathering ideas and seeing what works. And thank you all for sharing your experiences. We're going to move into the audience Q&A portion of this because we already have some questions for you. So we have someone from the audience asking, hi, student leaders. I wanted to ask, what has worked best for you all to get other students engaged with this process? Have you done anything creative to get this information out to students?
I can go first on this one, I guess. Yeah, getting students engaged has been most of the battle, honestly, to just get enough manpower behind it to do a lot of things. So at Michigan State, I was a part of Spartan Food Security Council. It's a club student organization that was founded in 2021, so still rather new. And a lot of the work that we did with Spartan Food Security Council was just recruiting people and raising awareness. So a couple different techniques that we would use would be hosting roundtable discussions, collaborating with other organizations that might do other like different issues, social justice issues, and bringing our issue to them and then building engagement that way. We also would do a lot of tabling. So setting up somewhere on campus where it's high foot traffic, we've got our big sign and different materials, and we kind of just engage with students as they're passing by. And we've gotten people to join our movement just through tabling. So like stopping at our table, Swipe Out Hunger's got cute stickers that we've had at our table before, and just handing out stickers and engaging with people gets them to come to our meetings. And once we get them hooked, then they realize how big of an issue it is and they become part of the solution. So those are a couple of the different things that we do. Yeah. And then those big events that like Eleanor was talking about, the big advocacy day, like visibility from those are also good, because there will be students that are working in policy related areas or health related areas, and they see this work and they're like, oh my gosh, how do I get involved with that? There's students that are doing cool things and I want to be a part of that. So really being active in promoting yourselves and bragging about the wins is also important.
I would say use the media to your advantage. That's personally what works for us. We're a very large student body, and with our campus newspaper, we are not afraid to talk about hot topics. We talk about everything. You'll see that in the front covers, and you're like, wow, that's pretty brave to be mentioning. And I've had the pleasure of being able to like give pieces and like my own perspective in there about even our own food pantry and have that in there because we know everyone sees a newspaper around our school. It's like in every building. But also the local media. We've had the luxury of over the years not only to have politicians stop by, but here in the from the state of Ohio, but also like with local news media, TV stations have come and do like they actually come to our food pantry and do like, live reports of like, this is us, we're actual people. And like, and then what happens is we have a lot of people reach out to be like, how can we donate? We're neighbor cities and things like that. And we realize like we can help each other. We didn't know that like us as neighboring cities, neighboring campuses, we both had food pantries. So sort of like help us learn from other people as well. So like use the media to your advantage. Hey, if it's free, it doesn't hurt. And sometimes it helps bring out the word, here we are, even if it's like we are in room this, and this. You'd be surprised how many people like you may have a food pantry. I learned that how many you may have a food pantry on campus, but not everyone is aware with it. We even did that at our university where we were like, we serve over 1,000 people. I thought everybody knew. It wasn't until I did a presentation that I was like, oh my God, you guys don't know where it is. And it was a nice way to spread out that information. So like social media, if your school has a, school newspaper, reach out to your local TV stations. This is an issue that's impacting everybody, almost everybody, whether there's a grandkid or know someone immediately who's a struggling college student, and didn't know that, there's other people who care about this or that it's a way bigger deal than they thought it was. So you never know. And it, like we did, it helped us get more people to be able to donate. So you never know how that might be beneficial to your food pantry as well. So work for us, maybe it might help you.
Yeah, just like Ashley said, definitely media has been an incredible connection to develop. And it's been so great to have a marketing coordinator that is very invested in it too. It makes a really big difference for just knowledge about the food pantry, but also like our advocacy work and involving students. I think one of the main things we relied on, especially as we were getting together groups of students, let's say for the lobby day, or when we had the senators and representatives come to our physical pantry, we handed student support cards. We relied definitely on our volunteer pool and all of the volunteers that work at the pantry, but also reached out to other stakeholders kind of around grounds that work with food. So we have an incredible organization at UVA called Food Assist that works to reduce food waste by redistributing food. And many of them were highly involved in our advocacy process and our food process. And then there's another organization called Food Against Hunger. Madison House is a volunteering organization that we reached out to get connected to some of the other food insecurity groups to kind of draw students in that we knew already cared about the issue, but maybe didn't know what was happening at the state level. So I think being connected and building networks is in coalitions, like Parker had kind of mentioned, but really building those networks at the university really helps you, again, kind of push that advocacy forward as a team. And that network can be built by reaching out to people who are already invested, but maybe invested in a different way, shape, or form than you are.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We have another question. So, how have you been able to get support from legislators or administrators who may have been on the fence or hesitant about the bill or similar legislation or just supporting the issue of addressing college student hunger in general?
I would say for us, even here at university, I'm not gonna lie, it was not easy. Um, I remember it was really my first year of working for a food pantry about like maybe like about now it's been about almost 2 years ago. And I had a conversation with our director And I was like, like, how did it happen? Like, how did you make, because our food pantry really started, I think, at the beginning of the pandemic. So it's been open for a couple of years, and obviously it's grown over the years. Also, has a lot to do with our student body also growing as well. And was telling me about how she had such a hard time even opening a food pantry on campus, and how she received like so many no's before a yes. And it just made me realize, like, I don't know, it made me have more questions like, why is this more complicated than it needs to be? And I'm like, I just don't understand. I really don't. And these small more questions of, for even our local politicians were also college students. So like you would think because they had the same struggles as we did that, they'd be more understanding. I don't know if it's, we're not giving enough those resources to communicate. Maybe it'd be great if they can come to our campuses. Maybe they need to see it in person, to be able to see how can we even get them invited. Like, that sort of middle way of getting them here. Like I said, maybe they need to see it in person. And how can we get them here? Because every university is different. Like we haven't had a politician come here to see our food pantry in years. Now, why is that happening? And are we the only ones that's happening to?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, I think inviting people and showing people really like the experience, and having people maybe that have experienced food insecurity, if people are willing to share their story, share their story, or and also just seeing pantries and seeing the need that actually exist. I think numbers always are important, and you will always be asked for numbers about usage and prevalence. And we all have those numbers and can work to find those numbers, but it really is the individual experience of students that like makes kind of a legislature or representative or administrator open their eyes, right? Like these are their constituents. Are meant to care and support people. And I think sometimes when just numbers are shown, it can be harder for people to connect to those numbers. And I think the connection is really how you get an advocate, right? It's how you get someone to stand up for you, to stand up for your bill, if they connected on the issue and saw that it was something that they wanted to fix and work on. And I think you can give numbers, and I think they need those numbers to advocate for it, especially for bills that have money going to it or programs that are going to take money to establish. But I always think stories are how you get the person to advocate. People advocate for stories, and because I think stories are people and stories are what make up people, and people want to advocate for people. So that is probably one of my biggest things, is definitely just showing, like drawing people in, and then really forming relationships with those people, and continuing to build and strengthen those relationships, whether it just be through like talking or jokes or making sure to check up or send thank you letters, but really making sure to both kind of have the stories, share those stories, and then maintain relationships so that they feel like you're also continuously invested, not only in whatever you're advocating for, but also in them and the relationship that you've built.
Um, I think both of our panelists covered that really well. To add in, Ashley made a point earlier about getting media involved, the local media. Other people around the community are reading these media pieces and seeing this as well. So that is a good way of building up that pressure on legislators to take action and to address the issue. If they're hearing it from just the students or just the pantry like administrators or pantry volunteers, they're hearing it from that one angle, but getting other people to start talking about it. And I've had people come up to me and ask me questions about it that I've never met before, which goes to show that like word gets around, and really getting word around to the community and having other people start talking about this with their legislators is important. So just getting all sorts of different angles. And that ties into something I think all of us have touched on, is that coalition building and really finding other allies to chime in and use their weight for the issue.
And I would end it by saying, if you're a college student watching this and you're like, well, how do I even start? Like, I'm passionate about this, or if there is a club or a team in your soul that's passionate about this, maybe get surveys or get signatures together of a bunch of students, staff, and most importantly, get supportive faculty who are interested in this, and maybe bring it to your university board and be like, I'm interested in this. How can we get to the actual house? How can we get the funding to maybe make a trip? Also, if you're not sure how to contact your local legislators, even your political science, well, like for me, because I'm in the political science department, right? But like they might know that contact information that you don't know, and they'll be able to help you get those resources. Sometimes those resources are just there. Just enough people don't go up and ask about it. So just ask. And those, those answers might be there. And like I said, signatures is a great way by saying, like, I'm not the only one making this up. Go around school, have clipboards, have people be like, this is a bill. I don't know if you know about this, but this is what's happening, and these are all the benefits that are coming to you. Would you like these benefits? Yes. Okay, get those signatures and bring it up to your president and be like, this is an issue. You need to listen. What are we going to do? It's a good idea.
Thank you all for sharing those solutions and ideas. We have time for one more question. This is a bit of a bigger picture question, I would say. So someone from the audience asked, how do you balance immediate food needs with long-term solutions like education, financial literacy, community development? So knowing that things like the Hunger-Free Campus Bill address maybe that more immediate need, how can that balance out with long-term solutions and ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Oh, Parker, sorry, go ahead.
No. You go. You started.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think it's something that we think about a lot, right? Because you have to meet that immediate food need, so people can stay in school and get the education they need. But you also really want to ensure that you're setting people up for some of those longer term solutions. Something we've done at the UVA food pantry is integrated this volunteer position that we call a welcomer into the pantry, and that welcomer has very kind of brief SNAP training, but is also there to really connect students to our basic needs coordinators at our university and help them work together to create these plans if they would like additional support in these ways. We've also partnered with our kitchen at UVA, and have actually taught cooking classes, and they have some information about making meals and shopping for groceries on a budget. So really trying to build partnerships like that into the actual experience of using the food pantry. So not only are you just, you're there reaching that main kind of getting that immediate food need, but also have the opportunity to be connected and kind of learn about some other potential kind of long-term solutions and working towards financial stability.
Yeah, great points. For what I was involved in primarily was a lot of this like medium to long-term work with Spartan Food Security Council. So we weren't the food bank. We worked closely with the food bank that was on campus. I see Kara Swain's in the chat and she runs MSU's student food bank. Shout out. So that's working a lot on the immediate, and to assist with the immediate needs as a student group, we would do a lot of food drives and different volunteer events to try and support Kara and the folks over at the food bank. So that's kind of our way of focusing on the immediate. It was through service and just getting friends together to do these sorts of things to help out at the pantry. Looking long term, we definitely, through our advocacy with Swipe Out Hunger and trying to pass the Hunger-Free Campus Bill, should set up for better in the long term. And then education was a big piece of stuff that we did. So I had mentioned earlier, we would do like roundtable discussions, that sort of thing on campus. So just educating other students about the issue and raising awareness in your community is important as well, so that when you come around and make these bigger asks, like supporting an actual bill, that sort of thing, you can call upon them and people are aware of the issue moving forward, because it's a pervasive thing, but there's also that stigma around college students where I don't think people realize that college students are going hungry. And so being able to educate on that is important. One tip that I didn't mention earlier with getting students involved is talking about it just in your classes. Something that we've done at Michigan State is asking your professor, hey, can I have like a minute before class to just do a brief announcement about an upcoming event that my student org's doing. And that's a good way to draw students in and both educates them because you're in the classroom setting. So kind of education-esque, yeah. You're teaching them about an issue going on, and then also invites them in to get involved in the work as well.
And then for us, we sort of spread ourselves out within our pantry, like within our university. So like we learned that our campus cafeterias were throwing away food, so we've sort of like repackaged the food and invested in freezers. We've also learned that like it's just a lot of food waste that we learned was happening like not only on our campus but like around our town as well, which was like shocking. So like we learned like that was happening with Panera, that was happening with Einstein's, that was happening everywhere. And we've done this whole thing about, creating partnerships with them. We're like, give us the food so we can give it to people instead of it being thrown away. Please and thank you. Um, but also there's things that you can do as students, while you're waiting for legislative moves to happen by spreading out the information beyond your pantry. So like a great idea that our food pantry did is we had one of our interns who just graduated who applied for a grant through our city, and basically now we're creating displays in our student unit and our library because we're like, there's also a history within food insecurities, and sort of spreading out that information because some people like, you know if they see it in a visual display, like, it'll be like, oh, what's that? Want to find out. So, yeah, look into grants as well. It's not easy. Like, for us to get where we're at today, it took years. And like I said, it's going to take a lot of no's, it's going to take a lot of head shaking and not understanding why things are happening. But like I said, it's more likely that you're not the only person who's interested in about this. We're all just trying to survive at this point. Beyond school, like we still need to eat. We still have a lot of resources to do. So find people who are passionate about what you do. If you have a local food pantry on campus, that's a great way to connect and just see how you can help, whether that's volunteering, whether that's internships within that's reaching out to like other departments on campus and doing food drives. Or we do winter drives too, because besides food, living up here in the north, we have a lot of international students who are like not well prepared for the winter. Heck, I wasn't either. Like I said, I'm from Texas. So yeah, it goes all year round. And like if anything you can take from this is that you're not alone, and there's other people who are probably as passionate or curious as you do. And the more people you get together, the more of a difference that you can make. So yeah, that was the biggest piece of advice I can give.
Thank you so much, Ashley, Eleanor, and Parker. That was all great advice. Thank you for sharing your experiences. We're going to wrap up our webinar for today. So very quickly, I just want to thank everybody for attending. Feel free to learn more about Hunger Free Campus on our website. Join us and join our campus network. And we also send out newsletters every month for everybody to stay involved as well as stay updated on our advocacy work. So thanks again, everybody, so much for joining. Thank you to all of our guest speakers, Sean, Zoe, Jay. Thank you all so much. And we hope you stay connected with Swipe to learn more about all of our amazing advocacy. Thanks, everybody.